The United States Air Force possesses the ultimate weapon of conventional destruction. A 30,000-pound bunker buster, designed to smash through 200 feet of solid earth and reinforced concrete. But in the classified war games, the Pentagon hit a terrifying mathematical limit. Because the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps didn't just dig 200 feet down, they dug 500 feet down. How do you defeat an enemy whose most lethal weapons are entirely immune to the greatest air force in human history? The kill chain. In our analysis of a hypothetical U.S.-Iran conflict, we have seen the impossibility of a ground invasion through the Zagros Mountains. And we have witnessed the catastrophic trap waiting for the American Navy in the shallow choke point of the Strait of Hormuz. If a conventional war begins, the United States relies heavily on a single, overwhelming strategic advantage: absolute mastery of the sky. The American doctrine of shock and awe dictates that any conflict begins with a devastating, coordinated aerial bombardment. The goal is to instantly decapitate the enemy's leadership, obliterate their air defenses, and dismantle their nuclear infrastructure before their ground forces can even react. To execute this, the Pentagon would unleash the stealth armada, B-2 Spirits flying non-stop from Missouri, invisible to Iranian radar. The initial wave would focus on SCAD, the suppression of enemy air defenses, blinding the Iranian military. But the commanders of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps have studied American air campaigns for 30 years, from Baghdad to Belgrade. They know that any radar dish left on the surface, any command bunker near the topsoil, will be vaporized in the opening hours. So they initiated one of the most obsessive, expensive, and secretive engineering projects in the history of modern warfare. They moved their entire strategic deterrent, their ballistic missiles, their drone factories, their nuclear centrifuges, underground. Not just bunkers. Entire missile cities carved hundreds of meters deep into the impenetrable granite of the Zagros Mountains. The United States Air Force anticipated this. They developed the GBU-57, a 30,000-pound kinetic penetrator. Dropped from 40,000 feet, it hits the Earth at supersonic speed, using its sheer, terrifying mass to punch through rock before detonating. It can destroy targets buried up to 200 feet deep. But Iranian engineers simply took the American blueprints and dug 300 feet deeper. Facilities like Fordo are buried so deep beneath solid rock that they are considered practically immune to conventional airstrikes. To physically destroy them, the United States would have to cross the ultimate red line: the use of tactical nuclear weapons. A decision that would instantly shatter the global taboo and plunge the world into uncharted, apocalyptic territory. And while the American bombers circle helplessly over impenetrable mountains, the true Iranian counterstrike begins. The IRGC doctrine is built on deterrence by punishment. If their skies are violated, they will set the entire region on fire. Hidden hydraulic doors, perfectly camouflaged to look like jagged rock faces, slide open across the Zagros Mountains. Massive medium-range ballistic missiles, like the Sejal and the Imad, are elevated into firing positions. These are not the wildly inaccurate Scud missiles of the 1990s. These are precision-guided, solid-fueled killers. Solid fuel means they do not need hours to prepare on the surface. They can be rolled out, fired, and hidden again in mere minutes. They are self-sustaining subterranean fortresses, capable of launching devastating barrages for months without ever seeing the sun. Across the Persian Gulf, the early warning radars at massive American installations like Al Udeid Air Base and the 5th Fleet Headquarters instantly detect the thermal blooms. The U.S. military relies on the most sophisticated, multi-layered missile defense shield ever constructed. Systems like Patriot and THAAD are designed to mathematically calculate the parabolic arc of an incoming ballistic missile and intercept it in the upper atmosphere. But in 2023, Iran officially unveiled a weapon that renders these multi-billion-dollar defense shields mathematically obsolete. The Fatah hypersonic glide vehicle, a weapon capable of traveling at speeds exceeding Mach 15, 15 times the speed of sound. Unlike a traditional ballistic missile that falls on a predictable curve, a hypersonic glider detaches in space and surfs the atmosphere. It can maneuver violently at thousands of miles an hour, completely changing its flight path mid-course to evade interceptors. American radar systems simply cannot calculate an intercept trajectory fast enough. The weapon moves faster than the computers can think. In a matter of minutes, a Fatah hypersonic missile crosses the Persian Gulf and detonates directly inside a hardened American command bunker. The illusion of the impenetrable American shield is shattered. Nowhere in the Middle East is safe from the Iranian mainland. But the ballistic barrage from the Zagros Mountains is only the first phase of the counterattack. Because Iran's greatest military asset is not a missile, it is an invisible, transnational army that has been quietly surrounding the United States for decades. The Quds Force, the elite extraterritorial branch of the IRGC, has spent 30 years funding, training, and heavily arming a vast network of proxy militias. They call it the Axis of Resistance, a ring of fire designed to choke American forces across multiple, simultaneous fronts. When the order is given from Tehran, this decentralized network activates entirely on its own. In Iraq and Syria, heavily armed Shiite militias unearth hidden caches of 100 and 7mm rockets and suicide drones. Without warning, a massive, uncoordinated barrage rains down on U.S. outposts like Al-Assad Air Base and Tower 22. These are not sophisticated military operations. They are hit-and-run guerrilla strikes designed for pure attrition. A billion-dollar U.S. drone desperately hunts the Iraqi desert for the launchers, but by the time the Hellfire missile is fired, the militia has vanished. It is an incredibly bleeding, multi-front war against ghosts, and it forces the Pentagon to burn through its interceptor stockpile at a catastrophic rate. Meanwhile, to the north in Lebanon, Hezbollah, the crown jewel of Iran's proxy network, opens a devastating new front. With an estimated arsenal of over 150,000 rockets and precision-guided munitions, they represent an existential threat to U.S. allies in the region. If American warplanes are bombing Tehran, Hezbollah is ordered to unleash hell, forcing the U.S. military to divert critical resources to defend its allies. And thousands of miles to the south, the Houthis in Yemen execute the final, choking phase of the Iranian master plan. Armed with Iranian anti-ship ballistic missiles, they target commercial shipping in the Red Sea and the Bab el-Mandeb Strait. They effectively close a second vital global maritime artery, amplifying the economic devastation caused by the closure of the Strait of Hormuz. The sheer genius of this asymmetric doctrine is its absolute, plausible deniability. Iran does not fire a single shot from its own sovereign territory to inflict casualties on the United States. The United States Air Force can level Tehran, bomb the nuclear sites, and crater the runways, but it will not stop the ring of fire. Because the proxy network is entirely decentralized, it is a hydra. Cut off the head in Tehran, and the limbs will continue to fight. Inside the reinforced concrete bunkers of Al-Assad Air Base in Iraq, young American soldiers sit in the dark, listening to the terrifying whistle of incoming artillery. They are trapped in a high-tech siege, surrounded by an invisible enemy that refuses to fight on a conventional battlefield. This is the true genius of the Iranian asymmetric doctrine. It negates the American technological advantage by forcing the U.S. to fight a war of pure attrition. The United States Air Force can fly thousands of sorties, dropping precision-guided munitions on empty rocket racks and abandoned warehouses. But for every launch site destroyed, the proxy militias simply pull 10 more cheap rockets out of a hidden desert cave. It is a catastrophic mathematical equation. The Pentagon is bleeding billions of dollars to intercept weapons that cost a few thousand. In the Situation Room, the President of the United States faces a horrifying strategic paralysis. The naval fleet is trapped or sinking in the Gulf. A ground invasion is geographically impossible, and the air campaign is failing to stop the ballistic barrage. The chairman of the Joint Chiefs delivers the ultimate, unthinkable reality. To permanently stop the Iranian missile threat, they must crack Fordo and Natanz. And since the 30,000-pound conventional bunker busters have failed, there is only one weapon left in the American arsenal that can reach that deep: the B-61 tactical nuclear, earth-penetrating weapon. To win the war, the United States must become the first nation since 1945 to detonate a nuclear weapon in combat. It is the ultimate red line, a decision that would instantly shatter the global world order and risk drawing Russia and China into a third world war. If the president refuses to authorize the nuclear strike, the conventional bleeding continues indefinitely. Every day the conflict drags on, the economic devastation compounds. The Strait of Hormuz remains closed. The Red Sea is impassable. Global supply chains disintegrate. The price of oil skyrockets past $200 a barrel, triggering a catastrophic global depression. And this is exactly what the architects of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps designed: a war of geopolitical exhaustion. They do not need to march an army into Washington to defeat the United States. They only need to outlast the American public's tolerance for pain. Iran's grand strategy is the ultimate manifestation of the porcupine doctrine. A predator may be massive, powerful, and heavily armed, but if swallowing the prey guarantees that the predator will choke to death on the quills, then the predator will never bite. By weaponizing their geography, burying their strategic assets, and encircling the region with proxy armies, Iran has achieved the impossible. They have built a deterrence machine so complex, so deeply entrenched, and so economically devastating to trigger, that they have paralyzed the greatest military superpower the world has ever known, without fighting a single conventional battle. The Pentagon's war games always end in a stalemate because the United States is playing a game of chess, maneuvering knights and rooks. But Iran is not playing chess. They flipped the board, set the room on fire, and locked the doors from the inside. This is the true cost of asymmetric warfare in the 21st century. It is a terrifying testament to human ingenuity driven by absolute desperation. A nation isolated, sanctioned, and technologically outmatched transformed its very soil into an unconquerable fortress. And as the Cold War between Washington and Tehran continues to simmer, the mountains wait. The subterranean silos wait. The proxy militias wait in the ruined urban landscapes of the Levant, their rocket tubes pointed toward American outposts. The unmanned swarm boats wait silently in their camouflaged coastal caves along the Persian Gulf, batteries fully charged. And in Washington, an uncomfortable, deeply unsettling realization has finally settled over the American military establishment. The era of uncontested, absolute American military dominance in the Middle East has effectively ended. Not because they were defeated in a grand, symmetrical clash of aircraft carriers and tank divisions, but because the Islamic Republic of Iran fundamentally changed the mathematical equation of modern warfare. They proved that a nation does not need a trillion-dollar defense budget to paralyze a global superpower. It only needs geography, patience, and a willingness to embrace absolute, ruthless asymmetry. By burying their vulnerabilities beneath hundreds of feet of solid granite, they negated the world's most powerful air force. By threatening the Strait of Hormuz with swarms of cheap drones and smart mines, they turned the U.S. Navy's greatest assets into floating liabilities. And by surrounding the region with a decentralized web of proxy militias, they ensured that any American strike would trigger an uncontainable, bleeding regional war. The United States is now forced to play an agonizing game of defensive containment, deploying carrier strike groups that cost millions of dollars a day to operate, simply to deter an adversary firing $2,000 rockets. It is a strategy of geopolitical exhaustion, designed to slowly drain American political will and economic resources over decades. And the rest of the world is watching closely. The blueprint for neutralizing a superpower has been successfully written and battle-tested. From the fortified islands of the South China Sea to the frozen trenches of Eastern Europe, adversaries are copying the Iranian model of anti-access and area denial. The days of uncontested American expeditionary warfare, of sailing an armada to a foreign shore and dictating terms, are over. In the Persian Gulf, the balance of power is no longer decided by who has the heaviest armor or the fastest fighter jets. It is decided by the brutal, unforgiving laws of physics and economics, by who can endure the most pain and who can inflict the highest cost for every inch of ground. The Pentagon has wargamed the invasion of Iran thousands of times. They have run the simulations, calculated the trajectories, and estimated the casualties. And every single time, the computer returns the exact same grim conclusion. The United States military is the most lethal fighting force ever assembled. They can win any battle, destroy any army, and level any city. But the chilling historical truth of the Middle East is much simpler and far more permanent. You cannot bomb geography. You cannot bankrupt a mountain. And you cannot break a fortress that is built into the very bedrock of the earth. The Islamic Republic of Iran remains standing not because of a superior army, but because it transformed its very existence into a lethal trap. A machine of deterrence so perfectly calibrated, so inherently destructive to the attacker, that it simply cannot be challenged. In the 21st century, the ultimate weapon of mass destruction is a nation that refuses to be conquered.